This presentation is about my journey in taking my course on Microsoft Project from the traditional classroom to the flipped classroom. The presentation will go over the emerging technologies that impacted me along my way in this journey. I'll present my observations on what I saw in moving to the flipped classroom and what it means for us as knowledge workers and as project managers. Thus, the purpose of my presentation is to convince you that the emerging mobile technology, either in phone and social media, is going to significantly change the world of education. I'm going to start off by briefly presenting some background information on mobile phone technology as it is a driver in my journey. Okay, here we have basic Moore's law diagram. And Moore's law is the proposition, I'm sure many of you have seen this diagram, that the density of transistors on a chip doubles every 18 months. What this translates is into the concept that the power of the computer doubles every year and a half. So Moore's law is not only an enabler for desktop computers, but it also impacts mobile telephone technology directly. To give you a practical application of what this means, if you had a child born and you promised to give that child a dollar the first year and double it every year after, by the time that child reached the age of 21, you would be promising to give the child over $1 million. That's the power we're seeing in the doubling of how many transistors you can fit on a chip. Now, while this rate of change has been occurring in the broader technology market with respect to telephones, it's unique in that we haven't quite seen this rate of change in this technology in human history. What I mean is mobile phones are pervasive and increasingly powerful, and as the power of the CPU goes to the phone, it makes that small size factor even more powerful every year and a half. And thus the impacts from that growth in technology are going to be, I believe, huge. And what this paper focuses on is the changes in the realm of education. Okay, moving on to the next graph. This is the graph from Forrester, and it's about the growth of technologies. And you see in the green part of the chart how long it took to get from 1900 to almost complete saturation with telephones. And you can see it took about a century. Then you look at the mobile phone anywhere from 1991 through 2011, and you see we're pretty close to saturation there. But look at the smartphone. The rise of that curve is incredible. I mean, we're almost at 40% saturation in as little as 5 years. So you have to look real closely at this graph to see that pink part, but that's Moore's law in operation. Now, what's significant here is that rate of adoption by mobile telephone technology is only matched in the history of technology by the adoption of television. And you can very easily understand the impacts, the social impacts of television, and you can now imagine what it's going to be like with the impacts of the smartphone. That technology is growing just as fast and being adopted just as fast as the television. So the point is that mobile phone technology, because of its incredibly fast adoption rate, will potentially change social interactions and relationships to a greater degree than television, because it'll be so pervasive and it'll be so powerful. And thus, I think it has significant social impacts have only just begun. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. This is just a quote from the MIT Next Lab. Again, I'm spending time here on the background items to make a point that adoption of phone technology is significantly different than any other technology we've seen. And again, brings aspects of social change that are not normally present in a technology advancement. And as MIT asks here, are smartphones spreading faster than any technology in human history? Mobile telephones, like cars and television, look very much like they're going to have a significant impact on society worldwide in the very near future, if not already. Okay, this next slide is from a group called AIIM. It's the Association for Information and Image Management. They've been around since the 1940s, so they're not new to the game here. And if you look closely at this chart, which they conducted in August 2011, and they were asking for information on social media and business. And the thing to notice that sharing expertise came out as the top reason why social applications are used in business. In other words, not just staying informed, but being educated was the #1 reason for using social media in business. What you see here is mobile telephones are the most common and convenient way to access social applications, so that you can understand how the two are coming together. The need for being educated and the phone device being that delivery mechanism. So what also is notable about this survey is they found that the larger the organization, the higher this percentage went. So in the larger social environment, the bigger need for finding and sharing expertise. So that's significant. Thinking beyond organizations on a level of countries, you can begin to see how this mobilization can move from the world is flat to perhaps the world is uphill. Even from a narrow perspective, the data clearly indicates that knowledge acquisition is the #1 driver for this social media and possibly, and by implication, the need for mobile telephone technology. Now, another slide, same sort of results. Again, same survey, different way to ask the question, almost identical results. And look at the spread. I mean, it's about sharing knowledge between staff. Again, a very important thing to take note of. Okay. So to draw a high-level summary of the emerging technology, mobile phone technology, and social media applications, and even associated project management trends such as Agile, they are increasingly being used not only to enhance productivity because it's always there, it's always on. It does that because of the quicker interactions. But the interesting thing here is the focus, the insight that it's being used for the acquisition of knowledge and expertise. So you can see how things such as Twitter, which was once thought of as a cute little tool, becoming popular and useful because it addresses this need to be able to quickly acquire and share knowledge. What a lot of people do with Twitter is they're following experts. So now it makes more sense as to why Twitter is an important tool. And in a way, the accelerating movements such as Agile are manifestations of this, again, this constant on technology, this search for value and growth. And you can see how mobile technology is going from toy to tool to search for knowledge, and then that's how I make the transition from here to manifestations such as Khan Academy and the emergence of the flipped classroom as anecdotal evidence that this is coming, if not already here. Okay, on to my next slide. This is a key slide. This is from Khan Academy. Salman Khan is the brainchild behind Khan Academy. Salman Khan is a former hedge fund analyst. He's got an MIT bachelor's in mathematics. He's got a master's in electrical engineering. He holds an MBA from Harvard. And again, he's fairly well known. Maybe you haven't heard of him, but he is fairly well known as the creator of the online educational site called Khan Academy, Khan. And in 2011, he was all over the media. He was on NPR, he was on Charlie Rose, Wired magazine, and probably most famously being endorsed by Bill Gates in a TED Talk presentation. Those are all in the references at the end of the slide deck. The importance of Salman Khan in the Khan Academy at this point is one of his observations, in which I'll call it the Khan Academy effect. This is the observation by Salman Khan that once students started using the self-paced learning approach, he noticed this trend over and over again you see in this diagram. And it's students that normally at the end of a month or a month and a half here, where you see in the red box area, teachers would assume, okay, here's my slow students, here's my fast students. But what happens after that first 38 to 48 days is all of a sudden you get this breakout of students that you thought were slow that are actually now you consider brilliant. And it's because the self-paced learning impact of being able to go back and go over the videos give a whole new group of students that are a different type of learner, they put things together differently, the chance to put it together and then become experts in that area. And that's the big impact of the Khan Academy, is that this impact is seen through the flipped classroom, through the approach, and through the videos. The technology enables a whole group of individuals to become experts. This is new, and this is definitely significant. And again, the point is, without technology to provide the opportunity to create the instructional videos that can be accessed by anyone, anywhere, Salman Khan doesn't accidentally move from being a future markets analyst to a potential disrupting force in the education industry, and one financially backed and personally endorsed by Bill and Melinda Gates. So the observation of the self-paced learner effect can't happen until the technology is there, and all the technologies are there. The ability to create the videos, the ability to distribute them through YouTube, it all come together at once. And again, here's the slide that shows the Salman Khan insights. Some of the kids you thought were slow 6 weeks ago, you now think are gifted. And if you have the chance, go to my website, thegazamethod.com, and click on related links, and you'll find the link down there to the TED video for Salman Khan and the Khan Academy and watch it. It's absolutely amazing. It's a couple years old now as of this recording, but it's still applicable to what's going on. I would like now to segue to how these emerging technologies impacted me and put me on my journey to the flipped classroom. Back in 1985, I'm teaching at Purdue Calumet. I'm actually teaching a 4-credit course on Lotus 123. And then around 1994, I have moved to Indianapolis, and by this time, and Microsoft Project is coming out, version 4. And I'm working at the Indianapolis Zoo as the MIS director at that time, and we are exploring distance learning. Very expensive technology, very limited distribution, but it's appearing. By 2001, a freeware product called Camp Studio appears, which actually lets you record shockwave videos of your screens on your computer and add audio. Absolute revolution for me. And I start using that product as I'm teaching Microsoft Project classes at a local university, AIUPUI, back in 1994. So 7 years later, I begin to add in these videos to my teaching of my classes. Related, but sort of differently related. In 2002, I did a class at IUPUI on. We did a class on Project Server. We spent months putting together a lab to do this, and we had a total of 4 students sign up, and we realized that was a flop. At least for me, it was a flop, and I realized that expertise in doing server is very much a specialist role, probably a consultative role, and a very serious use of resources in an organization. And at that point, I decided to concentrate strictly on unplugged Microsoft projects. So that gave me very much a focus for where my courses would go. Well, around 2004, Ivy Tech, which is a college system in Indiana, is doing a group of classes for sheet metal workers. At the same time, a product called Camtasia appears, and for the sheet metal workers, they're trained by the International Training Institute, which is based in Las Vegas. So to do the class for the sheet metal workers, this went over several years. I'd fly out to Las Vegas, do a 2-day introductory class where we would go over where all the materials are at, where they're contained, and I would bring CDs with the Camtasia recordings of a significant portion of the class on the CDs. And then we would set up a schedule where we would conduct weekly online classes through Yahoo groups. And we used basically a teleconferencing approach and some texting in that early technology. And that was, again, back in 2004. The technology wasn't there. It was very rough. But it was actually one of my first exposures to what I would call a flipped classroom. Also in 2004, I was just coming off a project where I'd spent 3 years on a team where we took mainframe health information system and converted it to client server. And the first year was a fairly brutal implementation. We had to go from February to December on our first hospital, get it off the mainframe, in other words, develop all the approaches to move all of the data to the new system, plus bring 15 related applications online all at the same time, all on the same day, before the end of the year, because we had service agreements and millions of dollars worth of contracts that expired at the end of the year and would automatically renew if we didn't make the deadline. So it was a very difficult project. And if you remember, in 2001, 9/11 also happened that year. So about September, our team members were extremely distracted. We did make it, and we did it using an approach where I dumbed down Microsoft Project and focused on just the essential elements. I did this because I knew we had to hit a very tight timeline, and I couldn't afford complex project schedules. I had to have something that just generated a schedule, let us track the actuals, and kept any other extraneous features out of sight. So that ends in 2004. And then around 2006, I'm still teaching at IUPUI, and one of my students comes up to me after one of my classes where I've taught the resource feature, and in frustration he goes, "Why do you teach us all this stuff, Kevin? Why don't you just teach us what we need?" Now this is happening at the same time I just ran a major enterprise mainframe conversion project over 3 years where I was doing just that. I was using Microsoft Project and just using the concepts that I needed. And I had an epiphany, and I decided I was going to rewrite my courses, and that's when the 5 keys concept emerged. Jump ahead now to 2011. I'm at lunch with a colleague, and we're discussing Khan Academy. He had not heard of Khan Academy, but his company was doing some distance learning through his infrastructure, and he suggests to me that I distribute my material through his site. We do basically a pilot that started in March of 2012, and it was a fairly good success. It was a flipped classroom approach. The videos would be pre-recorded. The students would watch them, and then we would have weekly webinars where we would go over the problem sets. So it worked very well. And we had some technical issues in the summer of 2012. Decided to move to the Udemy platform, and that's where I'm at today. So to give you a quick summary again, my flipped classroom journey basically started in the distance learning program at the Indianapolis Zoo. Expensive technology, not very flexible. It applies very much to a select group that could afford to go to these sessions, and it had extremely limited replay. My next encounter again was with this is really a flip prototype. It was with the Ivy Tech and the sheet metal workers, and it was through their International Training Institute in Las Vegas. Again, this is where I first started using Camtasia and putting Shockwave, which are basically MP4 videos, onto CDs and distributing them for demonstrations to the students to work on and review before we met online to go over the homework. And then by 2007, I have two things going on. I've got the mainframe conversion going on, and that's my two empirical labs here. My empirical lab at work, where I'm actually running real projects using the technologies I'm teaching. And then the classrooms I have either at IUPUI or through organizations throughout Indianapolis when I'm teaching this material. And then I have the student come up to me and say, why don't you just teach us what we need? And that's when I have my aha effect and the 5 Keys course emerges. Okay, jumping forward now to the summer of 2011. I've been teaching the 5 Keys method for 3 or 4 years by now at this point. And again, 2011 is when the Khan Academy is hitting the media, Charlie Rose, TED Talks, Wired Magazine, and this is a pivotal point in my journey because it is the first time that the technology and all the technologies, the Camtasia for creating the courses, the computer for distributing the courses via the internet, the phone is there, the smartphones are there to receive the information. It is all coming together in 2011. So mobile phone technology, editing technology in Camtasia, and high-speed internet infrastructure are all in place. Prior to this point, not all the pieces were there. They are now. And again, the target was set for the March of 2011. And even in the TED Talk where Khan Academy, Salman Khan is talking about it, he calls it the flipped classroom. That was the information that was coming out in June of 2011, very early. All right, the next slide here is an absolutely key slide. In getting ready for this introductory webinar in late February of 2012, my daughter is sitting next to me and pulls up my class on her iPhone. Unexpectedly, I turn and look at it. She goes, "Hey, Dad, look at this. It looks great on an iPhone. The video is sharp, the audio is clear, and it just blows me away." In other words, the form factor of a phone is not a detriment to getting the training. It's now an enabler. You can watch the video anytime, anywhere. And the importance of this technology is it's not only time shifting, but it's place shifting. So this is a powerful combination, as time shifting and no device dependency is unique. So you can not only watch this home late at night, catch up on things after dinner, but you don't even have to come home. You can watch it at the mall anytime, anywhere. That's big. Get it when you want, where you want it. And this is similar to what you see what's going on in the social media. It's the democratization impact you see occurring with social media, as the power of what we watch and when isn't determined by media moguls. It's determined by individuals. This is a big change. Okay, moving on to the next slide. This is where Udemy comes in for me, for my story. To have a change enabled in the mobile social media world, the content has to have an app. And for me, for education, Khan Academy and YouTube are apps where you can deliver education. YouTube delivers it for free. But for individuals like myself, with years of experience in content, I want to give up my experience for free. I can't afford to do that. Can't spend all this time on creating this material and then just hand it away. So Udemy is kind of like a YouTube education portal where the instructors charge for their material. So by the end of April 2012, the first pilot class with over 35 students is completed, and again, most of the problems and the feedback we had were on technical infrastructure lines, not with the content. Students love the content. They loved it because it's so close to being tutored, and you can't get a better education than tutored, but it's a very close approximation to being tutored. So it is a great way to be educated, and thus from that pilot, the content in the flipped classroom model approach is validated. And Udemy comes up, and I'm discussing with another colleague my technical problems with the course, and he strongly recommended I go to Udemy and check it out, and I did that summer. And by the end of the summer, I was convinced it was a good choice. The driver behind Udemy is an individual by the name of Gagan Biani, quite a dynamic person, and he had angel investors from LinkedIn, YouTube, and Yelp. So not weak investors. These are people that understand the industry. So I opted in. There's close to 5,000 courses on the site, and I'll tell you what, I investigated a number of options, but the Udemy platform continues to impress me. So in August of 2012, I took my journey on to the next path, and I entered this Udemy world. And Udemy is good. It takes advantage of social media to promote class offerings. For example, the easiest way to access or log into Udemy is to use your Facebook account. And it makes use of the like buttons are prominent, thus to help people find the good stuff from the junk and find good education from poor education. And that's part of what the problem will become as more and more education becomes a commodity. Also, in my journey, I realized that Udemy is not going to be enough. I'm going to need some sort of infrastructure on the internet to communicate what I am and what I have. And this is very much along the lines of what Tom Peters talked about back in the 1990s, where he says everyone's got to be in the business of creating me.inc. So while I heard Tom say this back in the 90s, I never envisioned it in this way, but it makes perfect sense to me now. I went out, I had to bought a domain name, inexpensive, thegezamethod.com. I built a web page with Microsoft Publisher. Granted, some of you web page builders out there are probably snickering, but it's pedestrian, but it was effective. It allowed me to create my site quickly, and thus I have a domain name. I've got a place to store it. I used register.com, and their monthly fee and bandwidth was very suitable to my needs. And so it was very easy for me to quickly put together my web page and get my site up. And now again, I'm still hosting my courses on Udemy, but I need a web presence about me incorporated, so it makes it easier for individuals to find my courses. So with register.com, they also offered an easy way to add in a WordPress blog, and thus it allows me to create magazine-like articles on my area of interest. Again, Microsoft project, an important thing for me to maintain interest in people coming back to my website. And they also let me easily set up a Twitter widget. So on my web page, on my home page, you can pick up my recent Twitters all in one place. It makes it very, very good. Again, Microsoft Publisher made this very easy to add. And of course, to let people know more about me, I've got a link to my LinkedIn account. So if you want to know more about who is Kevin Geza, there it is, easy to click on. You can get back to Udemy. So that you get the whole biosphere here. That you got the access to LinkedIn, a Twitter. You can, of course, email me. My Udemy stuff is there, and it all goes to one place, thegezamethod.com. And I am, of course, working on integrating in Facebook. You have to. I mean, there's over 1 billion users in Facebook, but that's a little more complex. But that won't be too difficult. That will be another piece added in, and my biosphere will be completed. My point is that while it did take some trial and error, this is not technically difficult. Most proficient people, probably most kids today who are born with laptops and mobile computers and smartphones, can easily create this stuff. So it's not tough. Okay, so here's where I'm at in my journey. I'm able to put all this stuff together, and I've got to ask myself, is all this worth it? In other words, do I have a market? Am I putting together a bunch of effort here, and it's just a tree silently falling in the forest? That's an important question to ask. But looking at this chart here, it came from the Microsoft Project Conference in Phoenix back in March of 2012. There was a presentation by Eamon McGinnis and Duck Tsai. Duck Tsai is an absolute wizard with SharePoint, and Eamon is a very, very talented individual in the world of Microsoft Project Server and SharePoint integration. And they present this slide here, which is basically an maturity model of how to get to server. And you see at the low end you have just Microsoft Project, the desktop version, and maybe Excel is what you're using for project management. And then you quickly move up to a collaboration level where you're using SharePoint, and then you move up to a team collaboration level with Project Professional, And then you move to a work group, and again, it's SharePoint and Microsoft Project. And for me, the realization was that, my failure with Microsoft Project Server back in 2002 isn't all that big of a deal, because you really don't get to a Microsoft Project Server level until you're at a fairly high level of process and maturity. So I think the course I'm presenting, or I'm creating and have created, is definitely valid through most of the maturity stream. In other words, you got to know how to use the tool and use it effectively to be able to get to that level of maturity. So I feel pretty good. I think I've got something good here. And one of the benefits, again, of using this flipped classroom and recorded video approach is, unlike most traditional ways people learn Microsoft Project, they go to a class and they have gaps in their knowledge. With this video approach, you can go back and review and make sure you've got a complete education or understanding of how a tool works without gaps. And you can come back to it because, time goes on. This is a difficult tool to learn. You can come back, rewatch videos, and go, oh yeah, that's how that works, and build on your knowledge and reinforce it. So it really makes you a solid tool user. Almost, I would call you master carpenters if I was building houses. And that's the goal of this, to reach mastery. So moving on, I just want to add another note about my observation from my journey, something beyond just Udemy and whether I've created value. And it is to ask that if in this journey have I perhaps found what's good in a good online class? Remember, I started out with the mobile revolution being fueled by Moore's Law, and how technology and social interactions are important things going on in the education realm, and how this is coming together and finding critical mass in things such as Khan Academy. And I presented how my journey began years ago, unknown to me that I was on this journey. I didn't know it. And then I argued that my first course offerings not only fit the flipped classroom, but the project management community as its basic training that all project managers need. So again, I developed all this in my empirical labs as a working project manager and as an adjunct professor. So I've got 2 labs, years of experience, and if you think my experience is valid and that my journey makes me a valid observer of what is good education, then I'd like to go over what I think are important elements to look for in online education and in a flipped class. The first item is a quote from one of my favorite authors, David McCullough. He wrote several biographies, Harry Truman biography. I love that book. John Adams, couldn't put it down. It's almost sad when that book ended. It was so well written. McCullough has many more books, but he was asked in an interview. He was on a book notes presentation, and a caller called in and said why he left out a certain historical incident in one of his books. And the caller was kind of irritated, or couldn't believe that such a big incident would have been left out. But McCullough had a great answer. He said, I had to leave a lot out, otherwise it would have been a catalog, and everybody knows that catalogs aren't very compelling reading. In other words, he knew you had to have a focus. You can't just boil the ocean when you're presenting something for the consumer to consume. So you have to minimize non-essential features. And again, think about all the training you've been to in Microsoft Project courses, the 1,000-page books that go on forever. They don't have a focus. They have these boil the ocean approach where they try to teach you everything, and in the process, they teach you very little you can use. And my students told me this was a frustrating experience, and I learned, and through the years, that's how I got to the 5 keys method. I've honed this thing down to what you absolutely have to know. So the first thing you should look for is, does the course have a focus? If you're just picking up a course that is again going to boil the ocean, I can't too strongly recommend that you avoid it. The next thing, again from David McCullough, is look for a teacher that has passion. And his quote is, show them what you love is what the great teachers have all known how to do. I love Microsoft Project. I use it for everything. When I was a company rep, I used Microsoft Project for tracking issues. I've actually used Microsoft Project for outlining and writing. I mean, the tool is very appealing to me. I guess I'm just a Microsoft Project geek, but I like using it. I always have liked using it. So I've got a passion for it, and that's what you want to look for. You just don't want some professor who, yeah, I've been teaching history for 25 years, and it's your students, it's your job to learn the subject. You want somebody who has passion for the subject. And if you look back in your own education, I guess there's a couple of cases where you had teachers you felt were very good, and if you go back and examine why you thought they were good, they either had passion for the material or they had passion for the students. They cared. cared. They either cared about the material or the students. Care is the coin of the realm in the coming ages. Care and trust. Care comes up in leadership. Trust comes up in collaboration. Okay, the last item I believe is important is, does the clock run out? In other words, in this day of technology and its ability to store anything from anyone for any length of time, it doesn't make sense to work with a provider that has a times out clause. In other words, if you don't finish viewing the material by the end of 90 days, it shuts off. That doesn't work because all you're doing is punishing the honest. I know it's a sad state to assume that people are going to purloin your materials, but the quality providers understand this, and they realize people need to come back to their old books and their old videos and rewatch things to learn it. And so when you sell them a license to use your material, it shouldn't expire, and that's what you should look for. The quality providers understand this, and they'll realize the challenge is to make up the shrinkage on the quantity and the quality, and thus the volume. So those are the three key things you should look for in an online class, and especially on a flipped class. There's a fourth thing you need to look for, and that's the existence of problem sets and web conferencing. A combination of skill set problems and case study problems is what I use in the 5 Keys classes. I think skill set problems should also be bifurcated between basic users and advanced users, and having this split between just practicing using the tool in the skill set problems and then applying what you know or making you think in the case study problems. It's a powerful combination because it helps cement the learning through repetition, through the skill set, and then through the application in a real business problem. It's very important to learn that way. So web conferencing is one way to do the actual in-class time, and especially in this age of technology, but it's probably more effective to do it in a real classroom situation where you can interact more closely with the students. But web conferences can work just as well because you go over the problem sets. Everybody's already prepared. Questions still come in. Answers are presented on the screen, and it is a type of feedback loop that is very powerful, not only for the students but also for the instructor, because each time you go through these web conferences you see insights as an instructor on how to improve your materials. So two types of problem sets: the skill sets in a case study I would recommend you look for, and then if there's at least web conferencing to provide that flipped classroom or the feedback after you've watched the videos, a way for you as a student to go in and interact with the instructor and get your specific areas addressed, because that's what you're shooting for. You're trying to emulate or get as close as you can to the tutoring aspect. That's where the flipped classroom has its power, is it moves away from the production line orientation where it's one-way communication, the teacher lecturing to the students, to more of a collaborative and involved and thus tutoring environment. And web conferencing is fine, but again, best tutors sitting right next to you. So the Cadillac experience, of course, would be one-on-one. Okay, moving on to the next slide. What's the importance of this to you as a project manager? Does all this matter to you? YouTube alone has millions of videos. Udemy itself has close to 5,000 titles. So the point is access to quality knowledge and education and training is going to become a commodity as time goes on. Thus the bigger issue becomes the same problem when you go into the grocery store, is to figure out which bottle of ketchup to buy. There's 30 of them. Which one's the best? And again, keep in mind that smartphones are growing at a rate in developing countries faster than industrialized countries. This is something called the JIP curve, JIPP. And the classical state is where the developed countries have a higher density of technology and the non-developed countries have a less density of technology. The mobile telephones, this is a landmark place where over the last decade the correlation between wealth and teledensity has been completely transformed. It's flipped. There's more mobile phones per population in the undeveloped countries than the developed countries. So here you've got access to all this education material, and in the non-developed countries they can get access to it now, but they also have a greater density. They have more people saying what's good and what's bad. They're able to find the good stuff quicker. So my point is, global competition is going to heat up once again, and knowledge is going to become easier to acquire. So you as a project manager may need to think more closely about getting into social media and social networks, either inside or outside of your company, to help you keep up because you're going to have to separate the wheat from the chaff, and your fellow employees are going to also be competing with you for your next promotion, and so are your competitors competing for that next customer. And we all have to have access to knowledge to move ahead, and having a network of social contacts that you trust and you can help you ferret out this content is going to become an increasingly essential part of your job or your ability to stay ahead. So not only within the company but outside the company, social networks then becomes a key to cut through all the commodity chatter. I think a corollary to all this is make sure you really enjoy what you do for a living, because it looks like in the years ahead it's going to be a long haul to stay current and updated with knowledge as a knowledge worker. So enjoy what you do, I guess, would be the underlying message. The other underlying message is make the transition to the social media world. I realize a lot of baby boomers prefer real face-to-face contact, but in the digitized world you see kids face-to-face contact through their computer screens or their phone screens. Adjust to it. It's a way of communicating and collaborating. It's not it's different, but it is not really that much different if you really think about it. And the keys to understand is that even in the real world, integrity and trust become absolutely important coins of the realm, because since you've got to trust on others and help get information from others to pick out the garbage from the good stuff, it is all about trust. Integrity become absolutely key to moving forward. Okay, so here's some final takeaways from my journey. I think this not only opens up opportunities for us as project managers to consume materials, but also for us as project managers to create courses and become online instructors. Everybody who's in project management has their specialties. For some it's earned value management, some it's risk management, some it's working with vendors. These are all important topics, and instead of sitting in a classroom and listening to somebody talk about these things, think about somebody recording them on Udemy or YouTube, and you sitting in the mall and you're waiting 5 minutes for your teenage kids to come back, and you get up to speed with the current thinking on risk management. That's the power of this new technology. That's what's coming. So again, not only as a consumer, all project managers are process oriented, like details, like to document, are communicators. This is all what needs to be in place for somebody to be successful as a creator of video training in this new age coming out. So does mobile learning work? If you're watching this on your computer, just take out your smartphone, bring up Google Goggles. That's a great QR reader program. Hit this scan code and go to a demonstration of one of my course modules. So it's done on YouTube, which doesn't have the clearness or the better video you're going to find on Udemy. Udemy does a better job of presenting videos. YouTube's not bad, but it'll give you an idea of what type of consumption you can experience in the form factor of a phone. So try it out. See if learning on your phone isn't compelling. Then ask yourself how this emerging technology, enhanced with social media, is going to change your world. I think it's going to change the education world significantly. And if you look at the cost of education, I think it needs to change. But this looks like what happened in the music industry and the book industry is now going to happen in the education industry. So it'll be some interesting years up here ahead. Thank you for watching my video. I hope this was helpful, and I hope I sold you on the proposition. Again, the purpose of my presentation was to convince you that the emerging mobile world of technology is going to significantly change the world of education, and hopefully this presentation here you see how that's going to happen. And you know, there's the quote about the future is already out there, it's just unevenly distributed. I think the future in education is out there, and it's coming to a mobile phone near you. Thanks again for watching, and take care.